In this video, I'm going to be covering the three key things that are most important to buyers as they are getting ready to purchase a home, specifically here in the Rochester, Minnesota area. Before I get too deep into this, my name is Alex Mayer. I'm an associate broker here at eXp Realty here in Rochester, Minnesota, winner of Best Real Estate Agent here in the city of Rochester a few different times from a few different organizations. And I encourage you to do your own research on me as well. I actually personally have over 200 five-star reviews here from Rochester area locals who, just like you, are looking to purchase here in the Rochester, Minnesota area. So I'm going to tell you today about the three key things I see buyers ultimately looking at when they are getting ready to purchase a home. And just to really summarize those for you, they are selection, affordability, and convenience. So when I talk about selection, it's about making sure that you have access to all of the properties matching your specific criteria. And if you're really not focusing in on this too much, there's a good chance that you might be missing out on a lot of properties. In fact, I know this from experience, from talking to other agents, from other buyers as they're getting ready to purchase a home here in the area. Oftentimes they're looking in the wrong areas. If you're just looking on the Zillows, the Realtors, the Redfins, even some of these big blockbuster brokerage websites, they can be a week to 2 weeks outdated, and you might very well be missing out on anywhere between 30 and 40% of properties. The reason for this a lot of the time is because they are large national geographical algorithms, and they are just not specific to our Rochester, Minnesota area. So there's a very good chance that you might be missing out on properties. When I meet with my clients, I always set them up on a few different home search engines, but just so that I can make sure that they're not missing out on something that might be of interest to them. I will also make a note on selection as well when you are actually out there looking for properties, and when you are setting any filters on what it is you are looking for. Make sure that you are leaving that a little bit more open. According to the National Association of Realtors, the average real estate agent only does 3.92 transactions in a year. I usually do anywhere between 4 and 6 a month. So I'm doing significantly larger than a lot of these real estate agents. But you have to understand that we are using the information that they are putting online. And there is a very good chance that they might have missed a box or checked the wrong box and might be missing out on that very perfect property for you. On the flip side of that as well, just be aware that I have had clients tell me they will absolutely not buy a house with a tuck under garage that is white, and they end up buying that exact house that they told me they weren't going to purchase. So I encourage you to leave your selection, your criteria, your filters just a little bit more broad when we're looking at things like that. If you would like to get access to my home search engine specifically, reach out to me directly and I'll make sure to get you access to that right away. The number two thing most important to buyers is actually figure out the affordability conversation. This is actually something I have a very upfront conversations with my buyers before we actually even get ready to go out and look at properties here in the market. It is important that you understand what you qualify for, not just so you understand what you qualify for, but so you also understand how it pairs up to the competition. I'll cover that in another video for you a little bit later, but understand that the type of financing that you have, the required down payment, what that means for your closing costs, what that means in negotiations and timelines is very important for you to understand, so that when we are out there actually shopping for properties, we know how to structure any offers so that it is protecting you as a home buyer. You don't want to be in a situation where you make an offer on a property where you put $7,000 down in earnest money, and then something comes up in the financing that sends it all south, and now you actually are on in a situation where that $7,000 earnest money might actually be in jeopardy. So it's important that we focus in on these things and we understand what we're getting into before we actually get out there looking at houses here in the open market. So affordability is a big part of this. I also have a deep conversation about what to expect for down payments. I get a lot of first-time home buyers seem to think they have to have 20% down to put onto a property. I tell people very common here in Rochester is to see a 3 to 5% down payment on the purchase of a property. It's a much more deeper conversation than that. So I also encourage you, if you would like to get some recommendations on some good loan officers, banks, programs that might be available to you as a first-time home buyer or a second-time home buyer, have a conversation with me directly, and I'll really get you pointed in the right direction as far as that goes. I should also make a note on that. Sometimes different programs can change from week to week. So there might be something that I've heard of recently today that might be new compared to at the time where I'm recording this video here today. Number three is convenience. And that's actually one thing that we as real estate professionals bring a lot to the understanding of real estate. There are a lot of contracts involved in purchasing a property. They are legally binding contracts. I have seen people get sued. I've seen arbitration panels here in real estate. It's important that you understand what these contracts mean, and they are explained to you in an easy to understand way. Communication is one of my three core values. My core values are education, communication, responsiveness. I like to explain things in an easy to understand way. I like to be responsive to my clients, and I like to do it in a fun, not so pretentious, using language that maybe the buyer doesn't specifically understand at that moment. Of course, I always tell people if something is a little bit over your head on what I'm talking about, bring that up to me so that I can make a little bit more sense as far as that goes. But from the convenience standpoint, understanding contracts, it's much easier to reach out to a buyer's agent who will represent you in the purchase of real estate. I'll talk a little bit more about agency relationships in another video for you and why it's important that you have your own representation. But it's much easier to reach out to a buyer's agent who can schedule 3 to 4 showings for you inside of an hour on your timeline than it is to contact each independent different listing agent who specifically represents the seller. They do not represent you. It's much more in your interest to have someone who can represents you in the transaction, can explain the contracts, can show you what we're looking at, give you references to different industry professionals, inspectors, appraisers, lenders, title companies. There are so many different people involved in a real estate transaction. And if you don't know who to talk to or who the right people are to talk to, it could potentially cost you tens of thousands of dollars over the course of home ownership or during the transaction. And nobody really wants to be in that situation where they're running into those potential pitfalls. Aside from the convenience side of things, we try to make this a fun transaction as much as possible, while at the same time making sure that you understand the different timelines that are going in the process from being out there shopping, what happens when you make an offer, what to expect once you get an accepted offer, as far as when do we deposit the earnest money, which if that's a little over your head at this point, earnest money is the money that we give to the seller to show that you are serious about the purchase of real estate. You do get that money back, depending on how I write the contract, in the event that you cancel due to an inspection, there's some sort of a financing issue, such as an appraisal issue, or God forbid you were to lose your job. And then what happens when we get to the closing table, and then what to expect if you are financing that purchase as well, as far as underwriting timelines, what sort of things are the banks going to need, so you understand what goes into that as well. But if this is something that you are looking to do here in the Rochester, Minnesota area, this is something I would love to help make this a smooth move for you. Again, I encourage you to go ahead and look at my online reviews. There are over 200 of them right now, and understand that I am in a hurry to serve, and I would love to make this a much easier process for you. Cheers.